The audience inside the Kelly Clarkson show studio buzzed with excitement. The cameras panned over the cheering crowd as Kelly walked out, glowing in a vibrant blue outfit, her smile wide and genuine, or at least, it started that way. Today's episode was supposed to be a celebration. The legendary Faith Hill was in the house, an icon whose voice had shaped generations of country music lovers. It wasn't just an interview, it was a reunion between two Southern powerhouses, two women who had climbed from humble beginnings to global fame. Kelly had admired Faith for years, and the opening segment reflected that warmth. They laughed about touring stories, motherhood, and the challenges of balancing fame with family life. "You've done it all, Faith," Kelly said, grinning. "You're like country music royalty. How do you even stay grounded?" Faith smiled softly, her Southern charm radiating. "I've always believed in keeping my roots close. My family, my faith, my music, they remind me who I am." The audience applauded, and for a while, everything felt smooth. Then came the question that changed everything. "So, Faith," Kelly said, her tone still friendly but laced with curiosity, "I have to ask, there've been a lot of rumors lately about tension between you and Tim. You two are one of country's most beloved couples. What's really going on?" Faith's smile didn't disappear instantly, it flickered, just slightly, like a candle hit by wind. The air in the studio thickened. "Kelly," she replied slowly, "I think I've learned that rumors are just that, rumors." Kelly nodded quickly, hoping to keep things light. "Of course, I totally get that, but I think a lot of fans just worry, you know. You've been together for decades, and in this industry, that's rare." Faith's eyes narrowed ever so slightly. Her voice was calm but firm. "Well, fans can worry all they want. My marriage isn't a public event, it's my life." The crowd murmured softly. Kelly tried to pivot, but Faith's tone had shifted, and so had the energy. Kelly laughed awkwardly, trying to recover. "No, totally, I just think it's something people care about because they look up to you both. You're kind of like the blueprint of what love looks like under pressure." Faith crossed her legs, her posture elegant yet guarded. "Kelly, I didn't come here to discuss my husband or my marriage. I came to talk about my music, my tour, and my fans." "Of course," Kelly replied quickly, but the damage was already done. The easy rhythm between them had fractured. The audience sensed the tension, a ripple of discomfort spreading across the rows. Kelly, perhaps feeling cornered by the sudden chill, tried to inject humor. "I hear you, but, you know, the internet loves to speculate. I think they'd rather believe drama than peace." Faith didn't laugh. "That's because the internet thrives on invasion," she said quietly. "And shows like this one sometimes feed it." That line hit like a thunderclap. A few gasps rose from the audience. Kelly blinked, her composure slipping for just a second. "Wait, are you saying I feed the gossip?" she asked, still forcing a smile. Faith leaned forward slightly, her tone icy but controlled. "I'm saying there's a difference between an interview and an ambush. You invited me here under the impression this was about my art, not my personal life." Kelly straightened in her chair. "Faith, come on, I'm just asking what everyone else is already talking about. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable." Faith shook her head slowly. "Intent doesn't erase impact, Kelly." The silence that followed was sharp. The producers in the control room exchanged panicked glances, their fingers hovering over the cue for commercial break, unsure whether to cut away or let it play out. The live audience didn't dare make a sound. Kelly inhaled, visibly frustrated. "I just think people appreciate honesty. I've always believed that being open connects us more as artists and as people." Faith met her gaze, unblinking. "Openness isn't the same as being exposed. And there's a fine line between connection and intrusion." Kelly's expression faltered. "I'm not trying to expose anyone." "Then maybe you should think more carefully about your questions," Faith replied sharply. The air felt electric. Even the cameras seemed to tremble slightly as the atmosphere turned heavy. Kelly tried to smile again, but it was brittle now, forced. "I didn't mean to upset you, Faith. We love you here." Faith tilted her head slightly. "I appreciate that, but love doesn't look like cornering someone on live television." That was it, the moment the audience collectively realized this was spiraling beyond repair. Kelly glanced toward the camera crew, trying to signal for a transition, but Faith was already unhooking her microphone. "Faith, please, wait," Kelly said, reaching out. "Let's just finish this." Faith stood, elegant but visibly furious. "Kelly, I think we're finished." The metallic scrape of her chair echoed across the set. The studio audience gasped as Faith set her mic down on the couch, the sound of it hitting the fabric oddly final. She turned and began walking toward the backstage exit, her heels striking the floor in rhythm with the stunned silence. "Faith, come on," Kelly called after her, trying to keep the tone light. "Don't do this." Faith didn't turn around. "Respect goes both ways, Kelly. Remember that." She disappeared behind the curtain, leaving the set in a stunned quiet. For several seconds, Kelly stood there frozen, one hand still raised slightly, as if hoping Faith might reappear. The audience didn't know whether to applaud, stay quiet, or murmur. Finally, Kelly forced a laugh and turned to the cameras. "Well, that wasn't how I expected today to go," she said, her voice trembling slightly under the attempt at humor. The crowd responded with scattered applause, hesitant, awkward, more out of sympathy than enthusiasm. The director quickly cut to a commercial break, and the moment the red light above the camera went off, Kelly dropped her smile and exhaled sharply. "What just happened?" she muttered to her producer. "Don't worry," one of them said nervously. "We'll edit it down. We'll cut the argument." But they wouldn't get the chance. Someone in the audience, or perhaps a staffer behind the scenes, had recorded the entire exchange on their phone. Within an hour, the clip hit social media. The video spread like wildfire, Faith Hill standing up, calling out Kelly Clarkson for disrespect, and storming off live television. By the time Kelly left the studio that evening, #FaithHill and #Kelly Clarkson show were trending worldwide. Some viewers praised Faith for standing up for herself. Others accused her of overreacting. But everyone agreed on one thing: what was supposed to be a friendly conversation had turned into one of the most uncomfortable live TV moments in recent memory. And as Kelly sat in her dressing room, scrolling through the reactions, she couldn't help but whisper to herself, "I was just doing my job." But somewhere across town, Faith Hill was saying something similar, "I was just defending my dignity." Neither woman knew it yet, but that single clash would ignite one of the most talked about feuds in daytime television history. The internet exploded overnight. By morning, the clip of Faith Hill storming off the Kelly Clarkson show had racked up millions of views across every social platform imaginable. Fans, bloggers, and entertainment outlets dissected every frame, every tone, every glare. The headlines were brutal and relentless. Faith Hill storms off live interview after Kelly Clarkson's disrespectful question. Kelly crosses the line. Faith Hill's walk-off goes viral. Country queens collide. What really happened behind the scenes? Hashtags like #Faith vs Kelly, #Country Clash, and #Talk Show tension trended worldwide. Memes appeared almost instantly, gifs of Faith ripping off her microphone, clips of Kelly's shocked expression, and countless "Choose Your Fighter" posts that split fans right down the middle. On Twitter, one fan wrote, "Kelly asked what everyone wanted to know, Faith's the one who couldn't handle it." Another fired back, "Faith Hill had every right to stand up for herself." Kelly crossed a line pretending to be friendly. It wasn't just fans talking now, celebrities were weighing in too. Country artists, talk show hosts, and industry insiders took sides. Reba McEntire posted a cryptic tweet, "Respect is earned, not demanded. Proud of women who know their worth." Meanwhile, Kelly's longtime friend and co-host Hoda Kotb shared, "Sometimes tough questions lead to tough moments." Still rooting for both these strong ladies. Behind the scenes, chaos erupted at NBC. Kelly's producers called an emergency meeting before the next day's taping. The clip had done irreparable damage to the show's image. One executive slammed a folder on the table. "This is a PR nightmare," he said sharply. "We need to control the narrative before this gets worse." Kelly, sitting at the head of the table with her arms crossed, looked tired. Her voice was calm but edged with frustration. "I didn't attack her," she said. "I asked a question. That's my job." Her head writer, Jason, cleared his throat carefully. "Kelly, you did ask respectfully, but Faith's reaction makes it look like we ambushed her. The optics aren't great." "Optics," Kelly muttered bitterly. "Everything's about optics. I wasn't trying to humiliate her." Her publicist interjected, "Intent doesn't matter online. We need to get ahead of this before it defines the show. You might need to make a statement, something empathetic." Kelly's expression hardened. "So, I'm supposed to apologize for asking a question? No way. I respect Faith, but she blew that out of proportion." Outside that room, Faith Hill was having her own meeting in Nashville. Her manager, Lisa, played the clip again on her tablet, shaking her head. "Faith, this thing's not dying down. You've got interviews lined up next week, and every outlet's going to bring this up. Faith sipped her coffee, composed but weary. I won't discuss it, they can ask all they want, I'm not giving anyone more fuel. Lisa hesitated. Then maybe you should say something. You don't have to apologize, but you could clarify your side. Right now, the internet's writing the story for you. Faith nodded slowly. Fine, but I'll say it my way. That evening, Faith posted a short Instagram video. She sat in her home studio, no makeup, wearing a simple white sweater. The tone was calm but direct. Sometimes, she began, people confuse kindness with weakness. I've always believed in being gracious, but grace doesn't mean silence when you're disrespected. I stand by what I said, and how I handled it. Her words were measured, but the final line carried weight. Real conversations don't come at the expense of someone's dignity. Within an hour, the video had over 1 million views and was being shared everywhere. Fans applauded her for speaking up, but others read it as a subtle attack on Kelly, accusing Faith of escalating the drama. Kelly saw the video between rehearsals. She felt her stomach twist. The tone wasn't angry, but it painted her as the villain. Her assistant asked carefully, "Do you want to respond?" Kelly sighed. "If I stay silent, I look guilty. If I speak up, I look petty." After a long pause, she decided to address it indirectly, on her own show. The next morning, during her opening monologue, she turned to the camera with her practiced warmth. "Y'all, sometimes things happen in interviews that don't go as planned," she said with a soft smile. "I've always believed in honest conversations. They're not always comfortable, but they're real. And if being honest makes some people uncomfortable, maybe that says more about them than me." The audience cheered, but not everyone was convinced. Viewers recognized the veiled reference immediately, and social media lit up again. Did Kelly just clap back at Faith? One headline read. Another. Kelly doubles down, no regrets. Faith didn't respond publicly this time, but her silence only added fuel to the fire. Over the next few weeks, both women's teams tried to move on. Faith threw herself into her tour rehearsals, her shows selling out faster than ever. Kelly returned to hosting with a polished, professional energy, though insiders whispered that the Faith Hill episode had changed her. "She's more careful now," one crew member said. "Like she's smiling through glass." Still, the tension between them lingered in the industry like static. A month later, the two women were both booked to attend the Country Music Awards in Nashville. Producers, sensing an opportunity, tried to seat them near each other for a potential reconciliation moment on camera. Faith's team refused. "We're not turning this into a spectacle," her manager snapped. Kelly's response wasn't much different. "If Faith wants to talk, I'll listen," she told a friend backstage, "but I'm not groveling. I didn't do anything wrong." When Faith arrived that night, cameras flashed wildly. She looked stunning, calm, collected, the image of poise. A few reporters dared to bring up the talk show incident. "No comment," she said with a practiced smile. Kelly arrived later, radiant in a silver gown, waving at the crowd. The press kept trying to get both women in the same frame, but neither allowed it. Inside, during the show, the tension was almost tangible. At one point, the host made a playful joke about talk show drama, and the camera quickly panned to Kelly. She laughed politely, but her eyes flickered toward Faith's table. Faith didn't react, she just raised her champagne glass and continued her conversation. Later that night, a backstage source claimed that Faith and Kelly crossed paths briefly in the hallway. They exchanged polite nods but no words. The silence between them said everything. The world moved on eventually, as it always does, but the incident left a mark. Faith Hill's phrase, "Real respect doesn't come with conditions," became something of a rallying cry among her fans. Kelly's supporters defended her as a brave interviewer who doesn't sugarcoat. The two camps formed invisible lines in the sand, each defending their idol. Months later, a journalist from Rolling Stone asked Faith during an in-depth profile if she'd ever go back on Kelly's show. She smiled faintly before replying, "I think some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. Some are meant to remind us where not to cross again." Kelly, when asked the same question in another interview, gave a simple answer: "Life's too short for grudges, but it's also too short to fake peace." And so, the two women moved forward, parallel paths that would likely never cross again. But in the archives of daytime television, their clash remained infamous. A moment when the facade of talk show charm cracked open, revealing something raw and unfiltered: pride, pain, and power. It was a reminder that even stars, with all their grace and polish, are still human, and that sometimes, the brightest lights can expose more than they illuminate.